let's go ahead and we'll talk about your lesson.
Okay.
Kind of debrief some things that happened in the lesson, and I have some questions that I'll ask you that are tied to those teacher actions and student outcomes that we saw in this chunk of the lesson, okay? So if you look at my scripting here, I'll let you see it so you can see what I thought through or what questions I have for you in that part of the lesson. And we'll identify if those are critical attributes that we should add to your cluster. And we'll look through some student work too as we do this, okay? So we started the lesson where you were reviewing pieces of previous lessons with your students, correct? Okay. So talk to me a little bit when they did the index card. First off, I want to say that was very quick. It only lasted about a minute. So it was a piece that, did it give you viable information from what they knew before in that quick 1-minute assessment at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have been going back over that definition of what is a summary every time that we go in and do a lesson, and sometimes we just do it verbally, tell your partner and hear it back. And then what we wanted to do was have them write it so we could see. So we have all of these students scored a 3. They had the 2 main parts of the definition, the brief statement and the main points. And then we have 3 students that got part of it. Like the student said to write a brief statement of something, but she did not say of the main points. So I would say almost everybody was able to get it.
So only
And
3
just
on
in
that.
that quick review gave us the.
Okay, so I'm gonna type that in here so that as a reminder for us when we plan your cluster, that this was something pretty critical to do quickly at the beginning of this lesson so you could see that mastery of something top of war. Okay. So as I was going through the script, there was a point here when you were still in the review that there was a key question. And what is the author's main point about the topic? Talk to me a little bit. I just had a couple questions. Is this a question about, was it critical for this chunk? And was it a review of a previous chunk?
Okay. The week before we had taught them to identify the main idea. So that was the question, the thinking question that we gave them. So when I want to find the main idea, I'll ask myself, what's the author's main point about the topic? So it is a critical question. It wasn't for this lesson, but it was more reviewing. So here's how we got to the main idea.
Okay.
Now we go on to our next step.
Okay, so that's a piece that, just a check to make sure. So,
Right.
All right, so we can think through that when we're planning cluster 2, if that's a piece to bring back. Okay. I made a note here that when you did the review, that was really critical, a nice link to where the students are headed.
Okay.
So I think how you set that up was nice, and I just put a note over there. Okay, so then you were getting into the objective of the day, and there you had a visual on your PowerPoint, kind of like nesting boxes. Okay, so is this visual, is that a critical piece that you really need teachers to use when you get to cluster? Talk to me a little bit about that visual.
I think we definitely found out that it's going to be critical. What happened was we went in, and our first chunk was we wanted students to be able to infer what's the topic of the text. And they did pretty well with that because they have a pretty strong background with inference. That was our strategy last year.
Okay.
And so then the next chunk was to take that and identify the main idea. And what we found was when we asked students what's the main idea of the text, they were giving us a topic.
Okay.
So they would say the main idea is tsunamis, and just leave it at that.
Okay.
So that visual that you saw was something that we used, I think the week prior, when we realized that that's what they were confusing. They were not differentiating between topic and main idea.
Okay.
So we created that visual to show them you have this topic, and from there you have your main idea, your summary, and then your original text.
Okay.
So once we started using that, we've seen a lot better results with when they, when we ask them to say main idea versus topic, they're seeing that difference.
Okay.
So I think it'll be critical.
It is critical. Okay, I'm going to hold that's a critical piece that maybe was a critical attribute last week, but it's something you want to carry over as critical from week to week. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so then if we keep going through your lesson, you went into, you were making it relevant to when you went on a vacation, okay, and you were asking students, is it important or is it interesting? Okay, so we
we kind of walked through that, and the connection that you made I thought was good. So if we keep going, when you got to, let's see, you got to the part where you asked the students, you came back to that key question. With the student outcomes, you ask that question, how does this support the main idea, I think is how you wanted them to get to, let me read you back. Where
right.
they didn't know the key question.
Right, so
The
it was,
thinking
what am I
question.
gonna ask myself when I'm picking out important details? And what we wanted them to say was, does this support the main idea?
Does
Looking for
this
details to
support the main idea?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bryce finally came around to go, okay, I think I know what I was supposed to say. So let's think a little bit about that key thinking question that you want them to ask themselves. How can you make it a little more obvious, or put it in the lesson where, boom, this is, you have to ask yourself this question.
Right.
So let's think about that a little bit.
Yeah, and so we talked about, I mean, Tammy even told me that at that point I had said that question 8 times, but they clearly were still not getting it. So thinking about getting them to use that question intentionally, maybe even when we do the vacation thing. So if you and I are partners, so when your partner says, yes, I think it's important to take my plane tickets, then the partner, I would have to ask you, well, how does plane tickets, how does that connect to our main idea of I'm going on vacation? And then if you said, the book I think is interesting, not important, then I might ask, why not? And you would have to say, because it's not connected to the main idea. I can take a vacation without a book. I might not want to, but I can.
Okay.
So, you know, just talking about getting the students to use that question with each other and building it into that activity that we already did.
Okay, so up here, when you were connecting it to the vacation, maybe trying to tie that get that key question in there for them to set that tone. I think that would be good. So really think about, it's a critical attribute to get them to take that question on, especially for students. So we have to make it obvious and like smack them in the face with it, right?
Make
so
them
they
say it over and over
Yeah,
again.
there you go. There you go. So that's something that you know you can tweak or change as you're thinking about you know, this lesson. Sure. Okay. So there was a part where I couldn't get close enough, but you walked over to, I think it was Nathan, and you talked to him a little bit. Tell me something that he did at that point, because I could tell by your face it was like, okay, this is good. This is good. Okay, so tell me what Nathan did. That
So they had this paper where they had the main idea down here.
Okay.
And then what I asked him to do was read the main idea, and then based on that main idea, pick out what are the important details. And what I noticed right away was that he started to highlight keywords in the main idea. So in this case, he highlighted challenging. So I just went over to him and I said, what did you do there? And he said, well, I highlighted it. And I asked why. He said, it's an important word. And then I questioned him a little bit. I said, how is that going to help you with what you have to do? And so he said, so I know challenging is a key word. So if I find anything up here that shows me that it's challenging, it's going to be an important detail.
Got it.
So then, like he said, you know, 30,000 feet above sea level, well, I know it would be challenging to climb that high, so that's an important detail. So, but he just verbalized that, and I thought that was really great, because we didn't ask them to do that.
Yes. So, okay, so then I noticed I didn't know at the time what you did, but then you brought it back to the whole group, and you said this is what Nathan did.
Yeah.
So, did other students take that on?
They did.
After, when you did the you-do part of it?
Yeah, several of them did, and it was funny because some of them went back, even though I didn't tell them to, and even in the we do, they went back and highlighted after the fact. It's like, oh yeah, I need to do that. But this student, like, here's an example, Victoria, she had not done that in the we do. In fact, she didn't mark anything down here at all. So here's the main idea, and she kind of underlined just a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
Like we usually see students do, probably a lot more than she needed to. So then when we went into the you do, I intentionally didn't say, now make sure you highlight what's in the main idea. I wanted to see how many of them then would go back and do that. So she did, and she underlined destruction. So the main idea was Hurricane Isabel caused a lot of destruction, and that was her key word. And then when you look at how much she highlighted here, it's a lot more focused. She highlighted then, or underlined, details that really showed the destruction. So it was more focused.
Interesting.
So I thought that was, for her, that made a big difference in being able to pick out what was really important.
Okay, so if you think about what Nathan did and how that impacted the other students, could that become a critical attribute in, when you take it to cluster?
Yes, I think so, and especially because our students, they're already in that habit of annotating, or at least we want them to be in that habit, so this would just be one more extension of that,
Okay,
you know.
great. Now, one thing I would say is keep these.
Okay.
Make sure you tag these, because this is what our discussion right here with this student work is the discussion you wanna have with your teachers in cluster. So make sure that you have these tagged and ready to go, so you don't forget
Okay.
the thinking that went on.
Yes.
Same with your index cards from the beginning. You wanna have some samples of how students were showing mastery on that, so make sure to tag some of those,
Okay.
okay? So you've picked out several critical attributes through our debrief, things that you can add to cluster. Now, what we'll do next is we'll take these notes and things that we've talked about, and we're gonna put them into your cluster meeting record, so that piece will be ready and done for you when you get to cluster,
Okay.
okay?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.